Hey, this is Solem Urbina, and tune into the relay for the latest news in boxing all around the world. Thank you for supporting myself and other female boxers. We truly appreciate it.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. Yesterday, Thunder Studios in Long Beach, California, super flyweight contender and friend of the channel, Solem Urbina, returned to action in the super flyweight division in what was a six-rounder opposite the ring journeywoman, Pasion, in what was a tick-over fight. Bit of a tick-over to ease Solem Urbina back into activity, get her back in the winner's bracket. That's exactly what she did, winning a points decision. Solem Urbina, who's had one or two tough breaks in her last six fights, the Naoko Fujioka fight for what was the WBA title, a fight I honestly felt could have gone either way. They could have swung it to Solem. They decided to swing it to the champion. It is what it is. The India Smith fight, India Smith, who's a better fighter than advertised, better than what you see on paper. I know for a fact that Solem went into that fight with breathing issues.
She was sick.
Just imagine how difficult it is to get into a fist fight when you're having breathing issues, when you've got a fever running or the flu. In any event, she was able to get back in the winner's bracket yesterday. Very nice catch and counter left hooks behind a high guard. Catch and counter hooks, catch and counter uppercuts, mid-range to inside. In the pocket, I happen to think Solem is a very effective fighter in the pocket, effective counter puncher. Mid-range to inside hooker. Seems to be Solem Urbina's sweet spot. She managed to secure the W, win a decision in what was a six-rounder. I would like to see Solem, at minimum, I would like to see Solem have one or two more fights like this before the year is out to get some momentum going, regain her confidence, some more sharpness. Fight that was fought in the super flyweight division, super flyweight, that's where Argentina's Maciela Lujan reigns as IBF champion. Mexico's own Ashley Gonzalez, she's got the WBC. Japan's own
Mizuki Hiruta.
She's got the WBO, and Argentinia's Clara Lescurat, she's got the WBA. Her and Solem, they've got some history. Some history dating back to the amateurs. It's a fight that on more than one occasion, I have seen Solem Urbina express an interest in facing Clara Lescurat in the pros, it being that Solem beat her in the amateurs. They've seen each other before, fought each other before. Solem beat her in the amateurs. She likes her chances against her in the pros, in the pro ranks, especially now that Clara is a reigning champion in possession of the WBA title. If nothing else, that's an incentive to want to share the ring with her. She's got a belt. On more than one occasion, I have heard Solem say that she would like to challenge her for it. I think the most opportunistic path to a world title, the most opportunistic fight would have to be a Mizuki Hiruta fight. It being that Mizuki Hiruta only has about 4 professional contests, 4 bouts.
Just 4.
Less than a handful of fights. No draws, no losses, no knockouts. She is the least experienced champion of the 4 champions at this weight. She is even less experienced than Solem Urbina herself. Solem, who sports a professional record of 13 wins with 3 losses. 14 wins now, it's 14 wins. BoxRec has yet to update their current records, It's 14 wins with 3 losses, 1 draw, 2 knockouts. She's obviously got more pro experience than Mizuki Hiruta, obviously has more rounds in the bank. I'd heavily favor Solem Urbina to beat Mizuki Hiruta. The real problem is getting Mizuki in the ring. It being that Solem is no longer with Golden Boy Promotions, and she hasn't been for some fights now. She was fighting under the Golden Boy Promotions banner regularly. It looks like they had a falling out. So that's a bit of an issue. How do you get Mizuki Hiruta, or really any champion, to give you an opportunity without a major promotional outfit behind you? That's a challenge that needs to be taken on, needs to be addressed. Well, she can. I would like to see Solem have a couple more fights just like this one, gradually stepping up in competition, getting some momentum going, sharpening the tools. As stated, I think she got a bit of a raw deal in the Naoko Fujioka fight. Solem was the house fighter at that time. That was a Golden Boy promotion show. And the fight to me looked close enough that they could have swung it to Solem, but they decided not to. The more recent India Smith fight in December of last year, most didn't realize Solem was going into that fight sick, under the weather, experiencing breathing issues, but she decided to soldier on. India's a handful. Managed to upset the apple cart for Solem, but now that Solem is back in the winner's bracket, hell, I wouldn't mind seeing them run it back. Being said, if she can't get a title shot straight away, I would like to see her keep busy at least 2 more fights before this year is out. Build some momentum, stay sharp, stay ready. Congratulations to her for getting back to her winning ways. Men's welterweight news ahead of next weekend's big welterweight showdown, the undisputed title fight between Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence. Errol Spence says Crawford fought a one-legged Jose Benavidez, and it was the toughest fight of his career.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
And that we're still hearing these kinds of comments, reading them rather, only a week out from the fight. I think that says a lot.
Still talking about resumes.
Being obtuse about it, it was a good fight, Spence stated. He fought a one-legged Jose Benavidez, and it was the toughest fight of his career. It says a lot. When asked to elaborate what that says about Crawford, Spence replied, I mean, he fought a one-legged Jose Benavidez. So what do you think it says?
He still stopped the guy. He still knocked him out.
Jose Benavidez, an unusually tall, long, and limber fighter for the men's welterweight division. I believe he stands in at about 5'11", close to 6 feet tall.
Just about.
A then unbeaten Benavidez infamously favored his right leg, particularly during the second half of his fight with Crawford in October of 2018. Benavidez has admitted that his right leg, which has rods and screws in it, was never the same after he suffered significant damage to it in a career-threatening unsolved shooting while he walked his dog in August of 2016 in his hometown.
Close to 2 years later, he fights Terrence Crawford. He was still an unbeaten fighter.
Now, I feel like I did amazing, Benavidez told BoxingScene.com in late 2021 about his loss to Crawford. A lot of people thought I was going to get stopped in 2-3 rounds, you know. I was actually trying to fight Crawford right before I got injured. I feel like me being injured played a big part in that fight, but I'm not going to make excuses. He beat me. He was the better man than me that night, but I was honestly fighting with one leg, and I feel like I gave him a great fight.
Crawford stopped him late. A couple of years after that, Danny Garcia, he fought that same Jose Benavidez.
And he couldn't stop him. He couldn't knock him out. He couldn't put him away the same way that Crawford did. And I imagine that he was only on one good leg in that fight, the same way he was on only one good leg in the Crawford fight, with the difference being that Terrence was still able to close the show. Errol Spence Jr.'s account of events, account of this fight, is disingenuous to say the least, because Terrence was never in trouble in that fight.
That fight never got away from Bud.
Errol makes it sound like he went life or death with the guy when he didn't. Crawford himself, while we're on the subject of resumes, Terrence says him and Spence's best wins came against Shawn Porter.
There's a credible argument that Shawn Porter is at minimum one of Errol's better wins, a better win on his resume than some others, the two-time welterweight champion. You can make that same case for Terrence.
The difference being that Terrence closed the show. He stopped the guy, rather forced a corner stoppage. Once again, Terrence Crawford closes the show where the PBC fighter could not, where Errol couldn't knock out Shawn and Danny couldn't knock out Jose.
I think that says a lot.
I think his best win is the same as myself, Crawford told Morning Combat hosts Luke Thomas and Brian Campbell in a recent interview. I think both of our best wins is Shawn Porter because I feel like Shawn Porter was the most accomplished fighter that we both fought. Given the names that Shawn Porter has been in the ring with, I believe that Shawn Porter was the best win for the both of our careers. Shawn, who's beaten the likes of Adrian Bronier, Paulie Malignaggi, Danny Garcia, Yordenis Lugas.
Spence fought Porter first in 2019.
When Spence held the IBF title and Porter held the WBC title, Spence ended up winning a split decision in a fight that was nip and tuck for the majority of the rounds, as opposed to what we saw in the Crawford fight. Crawford knocked the guy down 2 times where Errol only knocked him down once, and Crawford forced a corner stoppage where Errol could not. And at the time of that stoppage, Terrence Crawford was up on all 3 judges' scorecards.
It wasn't nip and tuck the way it was with Errol.
Spence and Crawford are headed towards a highly anticipated welterweight undisputed showdown July 29th this upcoming weekend at the T-Mobile Arena. My dream and my goal was to be here years ago at the pinnacle of boxing, Crawford said. I wanted the Pacquiao fight. It didn't come into fruition, but I moved up in weight and I wanted a big fight. I wanted Errol Spence Jr. I wanted Keith Thurman. I wanted Danny Garcia because I knew those were the fights that were going to put me on the stage. I didn't get those fights for X amount of reasons, but everything happens for a reason, and it's not for lack of trying.
No.
They made Danny Garcia an offer. He turned it down, decided to fight Adrian Granados and Ivan Redkach instead. They contacted Keith Thurman about a fight, and Keith, in his own words, said he wasn't interested. So while they're taking shots at Terrence's welterweight resume, why do they always leave out that he tried to fight these people, but they wouldn't oblige him?
They always leave that part out of the conversation, like he didn't try to fight these guys, like he didn't want to fight Errol years ago. If it's taken this long, it's because Errol wanted it to take this long.
We're here now. Me and Errol, we're on the biggest stage that either one of us have ever been on before. July 29th, we're going to put on a tremendous show and show the world why we're the two best fighters in the division.
The general dishonesty of Errol Spence Jr. is reflected in those who support him. His account of events, his account of the Jose Benavidez fight, that was hardly the hardest fight of Terence Crawford's career. I feel Yuriorkis Gamboa gave him a better fight than that, and that was many, many years ago.
So let Errol tell it, and he went life or death with a guy that was only on one good leg.
And his fans, his supporters, will parakeet those sentiments, those mindless sheep.
What I like to think of as Errol Spence Jr.'s buzzword brigade. Whatever he says, they repeat.
Mindless sheep.
Errol Spence Jr., who doesn't believe Crawford will take the rematch if he beats the hell out of him.
Not the craziest thing I've ever heard Errol Spence Jr. say. The disconnect is that the same is true in reverse. I happen to think if Terence Crawford stops this guy the way I think he's going to stop this guy, Errol don't activate the rematch clause. He won't do it. He's spent far too much time already campaigning as a welterweight.
Win, lose, or draw, win, lose, or fall. I don't think Errol Spence Jr. will campaign at 147 beyond this upcoming weekend's fight, which begs the question, would these two guys fight at junior middleweight? Would they fight at junior middle for no title at all?
When it's not fun, disputed.
In the eyes of many, Spence versus Crawford is simply too good of a fight to only see once. Regardless of the final outcome, most are convinced that a sequel, if not a trilogy, may be upon us. Those sentiments, however, are just wishful thinking. The way Spence sees it, if he dominates Crawford round after round, there won't be a need for a rematch. If I beat the wood out of him, said Spence on the Pivot podcast, he probably won't take it, probably won't activate it.
Got a 30-day time limit after the fight to activate that rematch clause, and it's my understanding that the rematch would have to take place this year, this calendar year, in the fall or the winter.
It's cutting it close.
Beaten up-and-comer Jaron Ennis is hoping that the fight between Terence and Errol is so one-sided that there is no rematch, and he can be next for the winner. That's what he's hoping for.
Errol anticipates he's going to beat Crawford so bad he won't activate the rematch clause. Jaron is hoping that's the situation, more or less.
It's all wishful thinking.
Ennis considers Spence versus Crawford a 50-50 fight, even if the bookies don't. One that truly could go either way. He hopes, however, that he sees Spencer Crawford dominate from ringside.
So there ain't no second fight.
Most definitely I'm going to be there, Ennis said during a post-fight press conference following his 10th round knockout of Roman Villa.
Was that 2 weeks ago?
The Boardwalk Hall's Adrian Phillips Theater. I'm going to be in a building, and, we're going to see what they do, Hopefully, it's a one-sided fight, nobody gets a rematch, and I'll be next, because he is the IBF's mandatory challenger, though in truth, it's wishful thinking is what it is.
Especially if Errol were to win. If Errol wins, you think he's going to stick around at 147 to fight this guy?
Super serious about Keith Thurman, fighting Keith Thurman, Ennis said. I was trying to fight him, in June, but, things didn't follow through. But, hopefully we do fight. If not, we got a lot of great options out there, We've still got Ugas. He's a nice former world champion. You've got Stanionis. You've got a lot of other guys, besides Bud Crawford and Spence. But everybody knows I want the main guys. I feel like I'm going to be able to showcase my ability and my talent against those elite level guys.
Feel like that'll bring something else out of me,
It's a 50-50 fight, and it's told BoxingScene.com. It's going to come down to whoever is in the best shape, whoever's got the most dog, whoever prepared the best. We won't know who the best man really is until fight night, but may the best man win. It's going to be whoever is hungriest on that night, whoever prepared the best for that fight. A series of generalized statements and generic predictions. Seems like Jaron Ennis just wants to ride the fence.
He doesn't want to pick.
What really is a 50-50 fight? A pick'em fight. A pick'em fight is a fight where either guy stands a legitimate chance of winning, and I don't really view this fight as a pick'em fight. For me and my money, Fulton versus Inouye is a tougher fight to call, a tougher fight to edge than this one.
In any event, Jaron Ennis wants the winner, and Spence praises Jaron Ennis.
He says he's open to fighting him. He's open to a showdown. If the money is right, I'll fight anybody. What seemed to me like empty promises.
Open-ended statements that are little more than empty promises for a fight that I do not believe will materialize for a number of reasons in a different number of scenarios. If Spence wins, he's not going to fight Jaron Ennis. He's likely going to leave welterweight and move up to junior middle.
Don't think Jaron Ennis is going to follow him up there straight away, because then he can be elevated to IBF champion at welter. In reference to Jaron Ennis, Spence said he's nice as hell.
But he's not going to fight him.
Telling you right now, if he beats Crawford, he's going to move up in weight and he's not going to fight Jaron Ennis. That's if he wins. If he loses, then he's definitely not going to fight Jaron Ennis.
A dream clash between Spence and Ennis isn't entirely out the window. Does Spence enjoy squeezing down his frame to the 147-pound limit?
Not at all. But you know the old saying, right? Money talks. Errol was quoted as saying, if the money is right, I'll fight anybody.
Yeah, but Jaron Ennis isn't a big money fight.
I feel like most of what Errol Spence Jr. says relies on the stupidity and ignorance of the listener, the overall gullibility. A lot of what he says, like what he said about Crawford and Jose Benavidez, what he says about an Ennis fight.
If the money's right. Everybody knows Jaron Ennis ain't a money fight. That's a high-risk, low-reward fight.
And if that's not enough to convince you that Spence isn't serious, he doesn't plan on fighting this guy, think about what his definite fight plans are beyond the Crawford fight. Think about what he said.
The same Errol Spence Jr. that's telling you that he'll fight Jaron Ennis if the money is right is the same Errol Spence Jr. that's talking about moving up in weight right after this fight.
He said, I'm currently making weight right now, so it's something that's been on my mind. I'll definitely move up after this fight. It's not a coincidence that Errol Spence Jr. hired a new nutritionist. He was using Fight to Be Fit Inc., who also
works with Bree Howling and Regis Prograis.
For whatever reason, Errol Spence Jr. decided to hire a new nutritionist, and you hear what he's saying, that immediately after this fight, he's gonna move up. I happen to think, win, lose, or draw, win, lose, or fall, whatever happens, he's gonna move up. So all this talk about fighting Jaron Ennis
Bullshit.
for the right price.
Bullshit.
It's bullshit. It's all fucking bullshit. Now,
I don't think Errol Spence Jr. is going to win next Saturday. I have Terence Crawford stopping him, and I have Terence Crawford stopping him late.
likely off a clean counter after a few rounds once Errol has become comfortable enough to let his hands go the way he normally does as the fight progresses. I anticipate he's going to get hit in between the shots, he's going to get hit in between the punches, and he's going to get taken out. And when he does get taken out, I don't anticipate he's going to activate that rematch clause.
No, I think he's going to take some time off. If he gets knocked out, he's going to take some time off, perhaps a year or upwards of it, the way PBC fighters often do.
Yeah, PBC fighters go on holiday like it's nobody's business, and that's after fights that they win. Imagine after a fight that he loses, a fight where he gets knocked out.
What I think is that Errol's going to get knocked out, he's going to lose, he's going to take some time off. Terence Crawford's going to move up in weight. Maybe he ends up fighting Tim Tszyu for the newly vacated WBO title.
Meanwhile, Jaron Ennis will be elevated to full IBF champion in the absence of the winner, the absence of the winner of this upcoming weekend's fight, and he'll sit there for a while having fights and building his name, building his resume.
That's what I think.
There ain't gonna be no Spence versus Ennis fight, and I don't think there's gonna be a Spence versus Crawford rematch.
All of that stuff is just wishful thinking.